The land breathed like an old man in pain, slow, shallow, and filled with dust. A hawk wheeled overhead, silent against the slate-gray sky, its wings catching the dying light. The Comanche warrior rode beneath it, his face carved from dusk and years, his horse moving steady through prairie scrub and scattered mesquite. He did not look up. He had learned long ago not to mistake omens for guidance. Too many signs, too many ghosts. The horse halted without command. Something in the wind, a metallic tang beneath the smell of sage.
Blood.
Old, but not ancient. He dismounted, boots quiet on the cracked earth. A rabbit carcass lay half-eaten nearby, forgotten by predators. But it wasn't the rabbit the hawk had circled for. He found the trail not 20 steps ahead, broken brush, drops of blood drying black against yellow soil, a ribbon of torn cloth fluttering from a thorn. He touched it with 2 fingers. Cotton, once white, now rust-colored. He scanned the horizon, listened. No voices, no hooves, only the wind whispering through bent grass. She was there in the grove, collapsed beneath scorched cottonwoods, her body curled like something discarded, not sleeping but unconscious, half hidden by a tangle of weeds and broken branches. Her dress was torn at the hem, her leg twisted wrong beneath her. Blood stained her side, but not fresh, seeping from a wound likely 2 days old. Her skin was the color of wet bark, and the braid at her temple had come undone, strands clinging to her cracked lips. He did not move toward her immediately. He crouched, watching, as if waiting for her to disappear. But she didn't. She breathed in shallow jerks, and her eyes twitched behind swollen lids.
Alive. Human.
That was enough to be dangerous. He stood slowly. His hand hovered near the knife at his waist, fingers curling, then loosening. There were lines a man didn't step across without reason, and helping strangers on land like this often turned into digging graves. He had no use for more dead. The first drop of rain struck his shoulder like a warning. Then another. A slow, deliberate rhythm, each one heavier than the last. Thunder rolled in the distance, not close but coming. He approached her in silence. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of her breath and the low grumble of the sky. He crouched and touched her shoulder. She flinched violently, eyes snapping open, glassy and wild. She tried to sit up. Her hand clawed at the earth. He caught her by the wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her from hurting herself. Her breath came in panicked bursts. "Don't," she rasped. "Don't touch me." "I ain't hurting you," he said. Her eyes searched his face. Mistrust burned there, deep and sharp. She tried again to rise, wincing. Her ankle refused to carry her. "You gonna leave me?" she asked. Not fear.
A dare.
He looked at her, then at the sky. "Rain's coming." "That ain't what I asked." He didn't answer. He cut a strip from his saddle blanket, bound it around her ribs. She hissed but didn't pull away. When he slid an arm under her shoulders, she didn't stop him. By the time they reached the overhang carved into the cliffside, the rain had come down hard, thick sheets that blurred the world into grays and smudged edges. He built a fire from dry branches tucked under his gear, coaxed the flame to life with patience and breath. She sat curled near the wall, jaw clenched, shivering but too proud to inch closer to the warmth. "You got a name?" he asked once, eyes on the flame. She didn't answer. He didn't ask again. He pulled dried meat from his pouch, offered her a strip. She took it with slow fingers, gnawed in silence. When her hand trembled, she tucked it beneath her skirt, as if daring him to notice. Her voice came low. "Where you talking me?" "Nowhere." "That's not much of a plan." He nodded once, agreeing. She leaned back, wincing, and stared at the fire like it owed her something. Outside, thunder broke louder. Lightning cracked close enough to flash their faces, her cheeks streaked with grime and blood, his eyes narrowed against old memories.
She spoke again.
"You one of them scouts?"
"No."
"You got army boots." "I took 'em." "From who?" Didn't ask his name. The silence stretched long after that. The rain softened, became steady. "Somewhere," the hawk cried once, distant and mournful. Eventually, she laid her head back against the stone. Her voice was quieter. You saved me for a reason?
He thought for a while.
Didn't feel like letting you die. That all. For now. She closed her eyes.
Well,
That's more than most ever gave. He didn't reply. He watched the fire burn down slow. His hand rested on the hilt of his knife, not out of threat, but habit. He kept listening to the wind, the rain, the woman breathing across from him. Sleep came like a thief, slow and unwanted. He let it. The storm outside passed in ragged bursts. And still, beneath the cliffs, beside a fire neither of them had planned, they remained. When he woke hours later, the fire had burned low and she was awake again, staring out into the dark. Her posture had changed, less fear, more weight. She looked over at him, voice hushed. You got ghosts, don't you? His jaw tightened.
yeah, she said.
Me too. She didn't say more.
She didn't have to.
He understood the kind of silence that came from losing everything. From surviving when you shouldn't. He fed the fire one more branch. It cracked loud and angry before settling. Outside, the sky cleared, stars scattered like spilled grain. They would ride at first light. But tonight, neither of them was alone. Dawn broke slow and colorless. The fire had died to ash, but its warmth lingered faintly in the rock. The woman stirred before he did, eyes open, jaw set. When he rose, she was already gathering herself, every movement guarded and tight with pain. Her ankle had swollen badly, the bruising dark as dried plums. I can walk, she said before he could speak. He looked at her foot, then at her eyes. Neither backed down. You can limp, he answered. With help. She said nothing, but didn't stop him when he offered his arm. The path ahead wound through brittle brush and slanted hills, the earth soaked from last night's storm. They traveled in silence, his pace slowed for her, though he never acknowledged it. By midday, the sun returned, harsh and bright. Flies buzzed around her wounds. He offered her water. She took it without thanks. Where we headed? She asked finally. He looked ahead, then gestured toward a low ridge. There's a spring behind those rocks. Rest there. She nodded. Her hair was matted with sweat, the line of her jaw clenched against pain. She hadn't asked for help, hadn't wept or pleaded. That alone told him more than words might. The spring was little more than a pool between stones, but the water was clear, cold. He cupped some into her hands. She drank, then leaned back against a warm rock, eyes closed. You got a plan? She asked. He took a long time answering. Not yet. Well, she muttered, you're not the talkative kind, are you? I don't talk unless I mean it. And what you meant so far? He didn't answer. Instead, he knelt and began checking the bindings on her ribs, replacing the soaked cloth with another. Her skin flinched beneath his hands, but she didn't pull away. You gonna tell me why you were bleeding under those trees? He asked, voice even. Her eyes opened. She looked at him, hard and sharp.
No.
They stared at each other, heat shimmering off the rocks. Then she broke it with a tired exhale. Man tried to kill me.
Thought he owned me.
I didn't let him.
He nodded once.
You kill him? He asked. She didn't blink.
Yeah.
He sat back on his heels, gaze distant. The wind stirred dry grass like whispers. Neither spoke for a while. That night, they built another fire under a wide tree bent from storms. She insisted on gathering wood, dragging broken limbs one by one despite her limp. You always the stubborn? He asked. Only when breathing, she said. The stars came out one by one, cold and indifferent. She hummed under her breath, a tune with no words, low and rhythmic. He listened, his knife in hand, sharpening the edge against a whetstone. The sound of steel on stone was steady, grounding. You ever kill a man you didn't mean to? She asked. He paused. Yes. She nodded, as if that answer was both expected and needed. I didn't mean to kill the second one, she said, voice low. But I wasn't gonna let him get me back to that place. What place? She hesitated, then said, south of San Saba. Called it a farm. Was a no farm. Was a pit. I stitched up horses better than I got treated. The wind picked up. The fire guttered, flared again. Her voice went quiet. Folk like me, we don't get second chances. We run or we rot.
He didn't argue.
He'd seen enough to know truth when he heard it. You, she asked, what were you before all this? He glanced at the flames, then away. A scout. For a while. Before that, I rode with my people. Before they were scattered. She considered him. And now? Now I'm not much of anything. She leaned back, her silhouette outlined in firelight. You're still breathing. That's something. He looked at her through the flicker. You think surviving's the same as living? Her eyes met his. Sometimes it's all you get. Their silences were no longer empty. They carried shape, weight, memory. He found himself watching the way her fingers moved when she spoke, tight, fidgeting when nervous. She caught him looking once and didn't turn away. The next morning, they crossed a shallow creek. She stumbled on the rocks, swore, tried again. He offered a hand.
She took it this time.
What's your name? She asked, voice rough from sleep. He hesitated. Then, doesn't matter. Everything matters out here. He didn't respond. That afternoon, they spotted smoke on the horizon. A single trail, thin but rising steady. She stiffened. Someone after you? He asked. She nodded. How many? Could be 1. Could be 3. I ran 2 days before you found me. They had dogs. He scanned the land. Open country. Nowhere to hide. We'll camp light tonight, he said. She glanced toward the smoke. They get close, I'll fight. He looked at her. You shouldn't have to. I already have. That night, their fire was no more than a flicker. He let her sleep first while he watched the ridge. The land creaked and groaned around them, like it held its breath. He didn't trust the quiet. When her turn came, she stayed awake without complaint. He lay near, not touching, but close enough to sense her movements. In sleep, he dreamed of drums, of a child's laughter, of fire that wouldn't go out. He woke with a start, sweat cold on his spine. She was still awake. You dream loud, she said. I don't dream. Then what do you call it when you flinch like someone stuck a knife in your gut? He rubbed his face, said nothing. She added, softer. I dream too. But mine ain't got no voices. Just running. Always running. They sat like that, facing the dark, neither offering comfort, but something in the silence had changed. Their pain no longer sat on opposite sides of the fire. It had moved between them. Before the sun rose, she said, if they catch us, you should run. I won't. You don't owe me nothing. I know. They broke camp without a word. The wind carried the scent of smoke again, closer now. Danger wasn't far behind. But neither were they the same people who'd sat beneath the cliff days ago. By midday, they crested a ridge and saw, far ahead, a line of canyon walls, red and sheer, like the mouth of some giant beast. He nodded toward it. Safe ground. For now. She followed his gaze, then looked at him. Then let's get there. They descended together, stepped slow, wary, determined. Behind them, the wind carried more than dust. Something was coming, but so were they. The canyon took them in like a secret. Red stone walls towered overhead, warm to the touch even in shadow. Water trickled through a narrow ravine at the base, shallow and pure. The warrior led her beneath a natural arch, their footsteps swallowed by dust and hush. The world outside seemed to vanish behind them. It wasn't safety, not truly. But it was harder to be followed here. No easy tracks, no echoing hoofbeats. And it was the first place in days where neither of them looked over their shoulders before they breathed. He guided her to a bend in the rocks where the sunlight couldn't reach until late morning. There, a tangle of brush and stone made a passable shelter. She settled in, her face drawn tight with pain, but quieter now. He built the fire low again. Not out of fear, out of habit. Some instincts never unlearn themselves. She watched him, one knee bent, hands resting in her lap. You used to hide in places like this? I used to lead others through them. She nodded. You were good at it, I bet. I was, he said, without pride. Why'd you stop? He looked at her. A long pause stretched between them. Because I stopped believing in who I was leading. A beat passed. Her gaze didn't flinch. You think that makes you better than them?
No.
Just less blind. She studied him for a while longer, then leaned her head back against the stone. Most folk never open their eyes at all. That kind of blindness, it's a choice. He didn't disagree. The fire cracked softly, casting shadows that danced along the canyon walls. They stayed there through the day. The woman slept, deep and dreamless, while the Comanche sharpened his knife and listened to the wind whistle through the canyon like an old man telling stories no one wanted to hear. By dusk, she stirred. The swelling in her ankle had spread, the skin taut and red. He fetched water and soaked a cloth. She gritted her teeth as he wrapped it tight. You ever lose someone? She asked, voice soft with pain. He didn't answer right away. Then, yes. Family? He nodded. Mine were taken, she said. One by sickness. One by chains. The rest by fire. Her voice didn't tremble. That was what made it worse. You remember their names? He asked. Every one. She didn't offer them.
He didn't ask.
Dark fell early in the canyon. The air cooled fast, the fire their only warmth. As they ate from a small pouch of dried beans and hard bread, the silence settled in again, familiar, not empty. After a while, she said, I think they're closer now. He had already known. He'd felt it in the change of wind, the quietness of the birds. I saw ash on the trail this morning, he said. Small fire. 2 men. Maybe 3. She drew in a breath, sharp and low. If it's them, they'll have dogs. He nodded. She set down the bread she'd barely touched. Her eyes were hard now, focused. I won't let them take me again, she said. You won't have to. If they catch us. They won't. She looked at him, really looked. Why are you helping me? For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. Then he said, because I've watched too many people die quiet deaths, and you're not one of them. Her expression cracked, just a little. A flicker of something, hope or fear. He couldn't tell. You don't even know my name, she whispered. You don't know mine either. They shared a look. In that stillness, something passed between them. Not love, not yet. But something just as dangerous. Later, while she slept, he climbed the edge of the canyon wall, silent as a shadow. He scanned the horizon. In the far distance, a faint glimmer of campfire light blinked out as he watched. They were close. Too close. He returned to the camp and began packing what little they had. She woke at the sound of rustling. We go now, she asked, voice husky from sleep. Yes. She stood without complaint. The pain showed in the twist of her mouth, but she didn't speak of it. Together, they moved through the narrowest part of the canyon, guided by moonlight and instinct. Their breath fogged in the cold. Hours passed like that, step by step, shadow to shadow, until the sky began to pale. Near dawn, he stopped her with a hand to her arm. His body went rigid. Ahead, boot prints in the dust.
Fresh.
He crouched, studying them. 3 sets. 1 light, 2 heavy, headed the same direction they were. He stood slowly, jaw clenched. They're ahead of us. She cursed under her breath. They know this place. Or they're guessing lucky. What now? He looked at the cliff walls. A narrow path snaked upward. Dangerous but passable. We take the high ground. She nodded without argument. Together, they began the climb. Halfway up, her foot slipped. He caught her before she could fall, his grip firm around her wrist. She hissed, not from fear, but from rage. I'm fine, she growled. I know. Still, he didn't let go until they reached the top. From the ridge, they could see the path below. And there, 3 men moving slow and deliberate. One held a long rifle. Another led a dog, tongue lolling, scenting the trail. The third walked behind, tall, broad, dragging something from his belt. Her breath caught. That's him. He didn't ask who. He already knew. The rifleman looked up. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Too far for bullets. Not too far for hatred. They'll be on us by nightfall, she said. He watched the men disappear beneath an outcrop. Let them come, he said. She turned to him, eyes shining with something raw. You sure about this? I am now. Together, they began planning. Where the rocks fell loose, where the canyon narrowed, where the light failed at dusk. Every turn, every shadow became a weapon. By the time the sun touched the canyon rim, they were ready. And for the first time since she'd stumbled beneath that tree, her fear had shape, and it had purpose. Behind them, the wind stirred the dust. The reckoning was coming. But so were they. The canyon grew quieter as evening fell, its hush like held breath before a storm breaks. The woman crouched behind a jagged rock, her back pressed to stones still warm from the day's heat. Her breath came slow, measured. Pain gnawed at her ribs, but she welcomed the bite. It kept her sharp. Beside her, the warrior adjusted his bowstring, every motion precise, deliberate. Below them, the three men crept forward through the narrow throat of the canyon. The dog strained at its leash, nose to the dust, whining now and then. The big man at the rear, the one with blood in his eyes and rope at his hip, moved with the grim patience of someone certain he'll get what he came for. The woman tightened her grip on the stone in her hand. She didn't need a weapon to feel dangerous. She was the weapon. You remember the plan? The Comanche murmured, voice no louder than wind brushing sage. She nodded. I lead the dog to the choke point. You take the shooter. I take the brute.
He paused.
You can't outrun him. I won't be running. He didn't argue. He only looked at her a moment longer, long enough that she felt something settle between them. Not fear. Not love. Something harder. Stronger. Like iron shaped by fire. Then he was gone, melting into the canyon wall like a shadow poured from stone. She moved low and fast, circling wide. Each step was deliberate, every breath controlled. The dusk cloaked her in mercy. When she reached the narrow bend, she found the broken ledge they'd chosen, loose rocks perched above the path. Just enough to create chaos. Enough to steal a heartbeat. She crouched, waited. The dog came first, ears high, whine sharp. She threw a shard of bone to the side. Just enough noise. The dog lunged, pulling the leash taut. The rifleman swore, yanked back, and in that moment of tension, the rocks fell. Dust exploded. A man cried out. She rose from behind the ledge, limping fast toward the open. The dog saw her, barked once, and she turned hard to the right, leading it into the narrow crevice. The brute followed, shouting now, voice thick with the taste of possession. Girl, you run. You die tired. She didn't answer. She just moved. The path tightened around her, walls closing in. The echo of boots on stone. The dog just behind. Then came the snap of a bowstring. A single whistle through the dark. The rifleman dropped, arrow buried in his throat. The brute roared, saw his man fall, charged harder. The dog caught up, teeth bared. She kicked, missed. It lunged. She fell backward. And then the warrior was there, blade flashing once, twice. The dog fell silent. The brute skidded to a halt, eyes wide. You, he spat. You're one of them red devils. The Comanche didn't answer. He stepped between the woman and the brute, shoulders squared. They stared at each other, neither moving. You protect her like she's yours, the brute said. She's not. She's a thief, a whore. The knife flew. It struck the brute's shoulder. He staggered, swore, pulled it free. Blood poured down his arm. He charged. The Comanche met him without hesitation. They clashed in the narrow space, fists and blades and fury. The brute swung wild, powerful. The Comanche ducked, struck, pivoted. They moved like old ghosts, like rage given form. The woman tried to rise but stumbled. Stay back, the Comanche shouted. She didn't. She found a jagged rock, hefted it, waited for her moment. The brute roared again, caught the Comanche in the ribs with an elbow, sending him crashing into the stone. He raised his blade, stepped forward, and the woman slammed the rock into the side of his knee. The brute howled, crumpled. The Comanche surged up, drove his blade into the man's chest.
Once. Twice.
The brute gasped. Then nothing. Silence returned. Not peace, just the hush after violence. The Comanche slumped to the ground, breathing heavy, blood on his side. The woman crawled to him, touched his shoulder. "You're hit." He nodded. "Not deep." She sat beside him, both of them covered in blood, not all their own. Above, the stars blinked into view, uncaring. "You said you weren't much of anything," she said, voice soft. "That was a lie." He looked at her, eyes dark but clear. "So was yours. You said you'd run." "I didn't," she said. They stayed there a while, side by side in the hollow where the fight had ended. There was no joy in the kill, but there was relief. And something like release. "You think that was all of them?" she asked. "No," he said. "But it was the worst of them." She tilted her head back, stared at the stars. "You ever think about leaving this land? Heading north? Starting somewhere new?" He was quiet a moment. "I used to. And now." He turned to her. "Now I think maybe I'm already heading somewhere new." She smiled, small, crooked. The first smile he'd seen from her that wasn't born of pain or defiance. She helped him to his feet. Together, they moved back toward the canyon's edge, where the moonlight poured like water over the rim. As they climbed, the land behind them fell away, stones soaked in blood, dust stirred by ghosts. Ahead was more unknown, but this time they'd face it side by side. At the ridge, he paused. She looked back once, then forward. "You ready?" she asked. He nodded.
"Yeah."
"I am." And with that, they stepped into the next day, the horizon open before them. No longer fugitives, not yet free, but something far harder to kill. Survivors. Together. Chosen. The land, as always, said nothing. But the wind moved with them.